We're going to do a tribute to Gilbert Gottfried. Now, I mean, he passed away like while we were on hiatus, had some time to process and whatnot. It is pretty shocking.
Tom.
Yeah,
it's making me sad. Like,
well, think of all the joy, he brought you in your life.
The first time I saw him was in the Problem Child movies.
Okay, yeah.
And I think if somebody's like, what's the best scene in all of movies that's ever been recorded?
Yeah.
It would be the puke scene from Problem Child 2.
I wish Gilbert was here to hear that. Because,
And I quote his Problem Child 2 stuff, like, I think he was head of the orphanage of Problem Child, and then in 2 he was a principal, and Junior goes in his office and farts, and he goes, ow, I just had I had it wallpapered in here and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I like the idea of him playing a completely different role from movie to movie, or that it's the same character, but he
got
somehow
a new
got
position.
A new job, yeah.
He's like, you should be. He hates Junior, so he promotes him from like 2nd grade all the way to 5th grade to get him out of the school quicker. He's like, you know what? You're not here. You're a figment of my imagination. And Junior goes, if I was a figment, could I do this? And farts. And he goes,
I've only seen the first Problem Child, so
Problem Child 2 is like, holy shit, it's great. And I there was a time period during like the pandemic when I was reading, like, there's this thing called Common Sense Media.
Right, yeah.
I was becoming obsessed with their like reviews of movies. And they had this review of Problem Child 2. I think I'm gonna try.
Okay.
I'll try to find it at some point. But it's like antics of a diabolical child are neither funny nor valuable. Or something. Like Adam Sandler movies, and they're like 1 or 2 sentence like descriptions were killing me. He was in Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Beverly Hills Cop 2, yeah.
And that really got me into. I found like it funny different ways to bribe someone. Like Rodney Dangerfield bribe in Caddyshack when he's like, keep it fair. Like I love, but in this, it brought in he tries to bribe Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop 2. He's like, I have money, and he's like, if I put money in this hand and then there's something in the other, he's like, that's like, look happened? The other way, where'd it go? And I like
different tactics
for bribery.
Like, okay, for me, I remember hearing him on the Howard Stern show. Like, I remember, like, hearing his voice, because the voice cuts through. And, like, I was, like, somebody else in the house was listening to Howard Stern, not me. And I hear him doing Dice Gottfried. Oh, hey, I'm gonna bite the bing!
Like,
I'm gonna bada bing!
He was in another one of my favorites, Adventures of Ford Fairlane.
Yes.
He was Johnny Crunch.
Here's to you! Sucking my dick. Yeah, in Fort Fairlane he played the Howard Stern role. That was a role that was written for Howard Stern to play, and then Howard Stern's his agent was like, yeah, you're not gonna be in this like piece of shit movie.
That's what I love too, and like
because he plays a radio DJ,
Yeah, and he gets electrocuted.
Yeah,
that's the funny thing. Like in that era when Stern was at his like even the highest of his powers. Like there was so many movie roles for him that he's turned down because like he was supposed to be in like one of the Halloween movies as the shock jock Barry Sims.
So any movie that you see in that era that's got a shock jock, you know
Stern was like
the cast. Yeah, it was him doing Dice Gottfried, and since it was just audio, I didn't know what he looked like and who he was. So I thought that it was Phil Rizzuto from the Money Store commercials. I don't know if you remember Phil. Like, it's because that's who it sounded like. It sounded like this sort of old-timey voice. So I thought Phil Rizzuto was on the radio doing some comedy routine. And then all these years later, I finally get to see the Dice Gottfried visual that goes with from like the Channel 9 show. And he's got like this giant leather jacket, like because Gilbert was a small guy, so he's wearing this giant leather jacket. It looks like he's wearing his dad's jacket.
Looks like he's in like Stop Making Sense or whatever.
And he's like smoking a cigarette, and he's doing all the dice moves, like smoking a cigarette.
He's like he was on Married with Children.
Right.
He was like, look, I'm Mickey Mouse. He was like there was like the cruise ship episode where they were like
they're like stuck on a boat with him. Yeah, it's like who's the most annoying person to be stuck on a boat with.
And then you can't believe he's like one of the most famous characters from like Aladdin, like Iago the parrot.
Yeah, that was like that gave him like a cachet and like being and being this kind of like dirty comedian in this this
kids movie,
beloved kids movie. He like like I listen to his podcast and stuff, and he's like such a fan of just like old Hollywood, like old comedians, and so he kind of has like one of those voices, like Jimmy Durante or something. Like,
Yeah.
like he it's almost like he created one of those like old timey characters for himself, because that's not his real voice. Like if you're like a longtime listener of like Howard Stern, it's like they pretty famously they'll play like this phone message they have him of like his real Gilbert voice, where he's like, yeah, hi Gary, this is Gilbert. And, yeah, he's like real low key and mumbly and stuff.
Like the late night circuit.
Yeah, I mean, he created like a cartoon persona for himself. Yeah, and like, you know, Jay Leno or somebody would like use him in like his bits and stuff.
Like he'd be interviewing someone, or there was a great clip I saw from like Conan's show, late night. It was like the early late night where he was like Dick Cavett.
Well, Dick Cavett would be like a regular guest on Gilbert's podcast.
Oh, that's amazing! I've never listened to his, but I need to.
Yeah, they still run the podcast. It's on every, like it's all, you know, obviously repeats and stuff. I'm pretty sure I've listened to every episode, and I don't think they ever once acknowledged his death. There was never a point where they chime in and say like, you know, the Gilbert Gottfried podcast, you know, regrets to inform, you know, like they never once, like they're just chugging along, and I feel like Gilbert would have wanted it that way, just like keep chugging, like pretend like nothing happened, just like, oh, here's this, you know, rebroadcast of the.
I get killed in a combine accident.
Yeah, we don't, on the Total Recall show, we don't acknowledge it at all. But it is kind of weird here, because I'd be listening to an episode and like, okay, I guess they haven't done like their tribute to Gilbert yet, and it's like, nope, still nothing. He has a co-host, Frank Santopadre, and the podcast is so fun because like Frank, he's like a comedy writer and stuff, and he does all the real work on the show. He does all the real like research and stuff, and he does like all the interviewing too. And then occasionally Gilbert chimes in, a lot of times with like a story he's told a million times on a million episodes. You know, he just chimes in now, or with some like incorrect fact or mispronouncing something. But like Frank carries the show. But it's so funny because like Hollywood is such a like status driven thing that no matter who they're interviewing, like Frank is asking all the questions and all this stuff, but they always address their answers to Gilbert. So like Frank will be like, they're like, well, Gilbert, you know, it's funny you ask that. You know,
that's so funny.
Like Frank's not into, because Frank's low status. Frank's like, Gilbert's a star. Frank is not. So like they're not talking to Frank. They're talking
to
yeah. Like so Gilbert gets like all the credit for, you know, all the. But I mean that's, you know,
it's all.
I'm sure Frank's fine with that, because that's you know, that's the star when you're the star. The funniest thing I ever saw Gilbert do, and it might be the funniest thing I've ever seen on television. And you're gonna want to run out and check, like you guys and you too, Matt. If you haven't seen this, you got to check it out. Now, there was you know, the TV show Wife Swap.
Oh yeah.
There was Celebrity Wife Swap. Have you ever seen any of those? Well, I mean, there's a Celebrity Wife Swap where
this is already hilarious.
There's one where Roddy Piper and what's it, Nature Boy Ric Flair?
Oh yeah, he has white hair.
Yeah,
that's Ric Flair.
So
the Nature Boy.
Yeah, Nature Boy. Roddy Piper and Ric Flair swap wives. So okay. you got to see that. I mean, I like run out and see that. The funniest one was,
oh god, this is hilarious.
Gilbert Gottfried switches with Alan Thicke.
What?
And it's so great because Alan Thicke, like Gilbert Gottfried was like a comedian on Alan Thicke's ill-fated talk show, The Thick of the Night.
We mentioned that previously on the show.
You know, Stan Lee was a guest once, and like Stan Lee, when he was on The Thick of the Night, he brought like some comic books, and then like at the end of the show, they just run the credits, and you just sort of see everybody just kind of milling around talking. And like everybody's talking and hanging out. Gilbert's just like reading the comic. Now there was another comedian on there too. I forget his name. He was like the voice of Roger Rabbit. But there was another comedian on there, and he's like reading the comics in this comedian, you know, like mocking way. But Gilbert is actually sitting there, like you can tell he's not doing like a bit or anything. He is seriously like he wants to find out what's happening to Spider-Man, you know. But anyway, so Gilbert Gottfried was like the comedy guy on Alan Thicke's talk show. So now he's on Wife Swap. He's switching. So now Alan Thicke is with his wife, Gilbert's wife, Dara, who's like the producer of the podcast. And Gilbert is with Alan's, like fourth wife or whatever, like.
I think he was like when he was on what's that called, Growing Pains?
Growing Pains.
Wasn't he like screwing around with, like a porn star or
Yeah,
something?
like they would have like Playboy Playmates on as like guests like every episode, and he would he'd be like, I mean, he lived a life, Alan Thicke, but yeah, he's been married a bunch of times. But anyway,
Mike Seaver.
So he any relation to Colt Seaver? But he that's headcanon.
Oh my
god. So Gilbert's living with Alan Thicke's wife, and she is just completely instantly repulsed by Gilbert, and Gilbert spends his entire time with her doing an Alan Thicke impersonation. And he's like the Thicke of the Night, Alan Thicke. It's kind of like the Total Recall show, because Alan Thicke, is like a musician and stuff like that, and like he wants the world to buy into him as a musician.
Oh yeah.
He wrote, conceived, and performs the Thicke of the Night theme song.
Hell yeah.
So like, Gilbert is like, he's chasing Alan Thicke's wife around the apartment, playing air guitar, pretending to be Alan Thicke, singing the Alan Thicke themes. It's like, well, in the thick of the day, well, and he does not stop. He's just like they kind of like cut away, and then they cut back. They fast forward. They do dissolve, and he's just following her around and he's like 3 feet tall, and she's super
7 foot tall.
Yeah, and he's just following her. In the thick of the day, and then he's doing like the banter that he would do to like when he introducing Gilbert. He'd be like, now there's a man who lives up above our studios, and here he comes down. His name's Gilbert. Come on down, Gilbert. So he's and like I'm dying watching this. And like you know how Gilbert commits to a bit.
He's all in on it.
And the fact that she is so turned off to this
makes me do it even more.
Is fuel. So he's like her shadow basically. She can't go anywhere without him doing this. Like he's just breaking, like her husband, the guy she loves, the guy she lives with, he's just breaking him down to like nonstop, making him seem like the biggest dork.
The funniest thing, like he's just thinking about it. He's singing the Thicke of the Night theme song, and he's not stopping. He's just like this little guy, like just everything about it is just like the funniest thing I've ever.
Yeah, he just like he can't be real, and I think even on the same episode, like. His wife Dara is talking about Gilbert. And like they have some of Gilbert's friends over, and it's like Paul Schaefer and like a couple other celebrities come over. And she's like, no, I don't think this was in the Celebrity Wife Swap. I think it was in the Gilbert documentary, which is really good if you haven't seen the Gilbert documentary.
I haven't seen that, no.
Yeah, there's a Gilbert documentary, and she's talking about, and that's when like Paul Schaefer and stuff come over. And she's like, Gilbert, when he has friends, but they never talk about anything real. They never talk about their life or their feelings. It's all just like pop culture and showbiz stuff. It's kind of like, I can relate. Like I'm sure you could do like a similar interview with my wife where like he doesn't want to talk about anything real. He doesn't want to talk about feelings. He just wants to talk about old movies and
this is pretty much. I think you're nailing it.
Abbott and Costello, the Three Stooges, like he does. And his friend Gilbert, I always felt like a kinship with Gilbert in some way. Like, and I get like he's like a comics fan, and he wrote comics too. He was on the Superboy TV show, and he played a villain called Knick Knack, and then he like started writing like the Superboy comic writing.
Oh, wow.
I think he just wrote Knick Knack centric comic stories, but maybe he wrote other stuff too.
Cool.
But yeah.
That's awesome. I did not know that aspect of Gilbert.
Yeah, I mean, he was like a nerd, and so he was like a fan of comic books, old movies, and especially horror movies. Like that was the big, and so he had he could like recite lines from all the old.
Cool.
His Bela Lugosi imitation's famous.
Oh my god.
His Karloff imitation, and then his Abbott and Costello meeting Frankenstein imitation, and his old Groucho. His old Groucho is like, that's the showstopper.
Holy crap.
And I love Gilbert's old Groucho. The senile Groucho. on the Dick Cavett show with the hat that had, like, he would always wear these funny golf hats with like golf ball. He'd have like golf balls hanging on the string in front of his face and stuff.
The bit on Conan was Dick Cavett came out and was like supposed. I think he was Gilbert in, like, he was speaking and it was Gilbert's voice.
Oh, that's funny.
And then he goes backstage and Gilbert comes back out, but he's holding like this deflated Dick Cavett like costume, and he's like
that it was him.
That it was him as Dick Cavett.
Now, yeah, because like Dick Cavett, like that's where all this old Groucho stuff is from. It's from like his Dick Cavett interviews, and Gilbert says like the first time he told Dick Cavett, like the first time he did his Groucho imitation for Dick Cavett, like Dick Cavett's face turned white, like because it was like Groucho back from the grave, and like no, like, you know, somebody does, you know, Gabe Kaplan does Groucho. He's doing young Groucho. He's putting on the mustache, but Gilbert specialized in old Groucho.
Mickey Dolenz does a great Groucho.
And Gilbert's Groucho, it would be like, he would over-explain it. And in my day, we had a thing called coffee. and in my day, you'd drink it hot. You'd put hot, you'd have it hot, and you'd drink it, and maybe you'd like some cream in it.
Old Groucho! Dude, I'm going all in on old Groucho stuff.
Well, yeah, Gilbert's, because like, you know, Gilbert's imitation of old Groucho made me go seek out, like, on YouTube, like, old Groucho interviews on Dick Cavett, and it's like, it's like spot on.
That's hilarious.
And then he'll do like old George Burns and old Groucho. Like, he just like is obsessed with these sort of old, you know, comedians.
Who's the guy with the giant dick?
Oh, that's Uncle Milty. That's Milton Berle. No. That'd be funny if George Burns had a giant.
George Burns.
That's why Gracie died young.
Oh God 3. I saw George Burns' dick. Oh God.
Oh God. Oh God, you devil. We got to do the Oh God series.
Holy shit! Yes, John Dillon. Denver.
The reboot of Oh God is called Holy Shit.
Holy shit.
Gilbert, like, he's doing, like, his voice and his persona is like cut from the same cloth of like an old vaudevillian or something. I've never seen his stand-up. Like, I've seen him on roasts and do jokes, but I've never seen his stand-up. But, like, from what I understand, he's, like, been doing the same jokes since, like, 1979, you know? So he's got his, like, old vaudevillian, you know, act that he does that, you know, is...
If you were, like, a vaudevillian, you would have, like, you just never would change.
Right, yeah, like, you just go to a different town every day. In my day, they had comedy clubs, and we'd do comedy at the comedy clubs.
And
Gilbert and John Ritter are reunited in heaven and, you know,
once again
doing a Problem Child sequel.
It's like, oh no, you have those, like, somebody's wearing like the 80s basketball shorts with the white piping, and when their balls fall out, it's called pulling a Ritter.
Well, yeah, it's like the big famous scene for him is him falling out of the hammock. You always see, like, you know, any retrospective, you see him falling out of the hammock.
The Regal Beagle.
The same thing's happening with his banana hammock. He falls out of the hammock, his nuts fall out of his short shorts. His Richard Simmons shorts.
It's like a Dr. J shorts.
Well, it's
pulling a Ritter.
It's funny, like, John Ritter's pants in Three's Company were designed backwards because they're like super roomy and open around the foot, but then they're so constricted and tight around the waist. It's like reverse that. Make it comfortable up top, and then you have to make it a little tighter at the bottom.
It's like from Apollo 13, the engineers. They're like the NASA guys are like, there's too much power around the waist.
Yeah, it's like the bottoms are like the bell bottoms are like this like rocket booster.
Houston, we have a problem. My balls are under the shorts. Yeah, his nuts made it on the air.
His best moments really were like on the Howard Stern show. Like, Howard Stern helped, like, he does have this talent for like curating people. Like Gilbert was never funnier than like when he was on Stern. Like, he knew how to highlight him and how to get like the best out of him.
He was in that definitely in the Aristocrats, that movie.
Yeah. Oh, you know what was the other speaking of the Aristocrats and like dirty jokes and stuff, he had like the joke that got him like banned from television and I remember seeing it in real time.
Oh my God.
He was on like some award show. I forget what it was. Maybe it was like MTV Awards or maybe even like the Grammys or something. It was Pee Wee Herman jokes. It was after Pee Wee Herman got arrested for for like being in an adult movie theater or whatever. And he's on the award show and he's like, oh, talking about Pee Wee Herman. If masturbation is a crime, I should be on death row. And like, huge
Pop.
huge laugh, and then he was like banned, like whatever network that was, or if it was like the Grammys or the MTV Awards or whatever, like just never allowed to be back on ever again. But I mean, great joke, great line.
That's hilarious.
Great line. I don't think I like at the time. I don't think I understood what he like. I knew it was bad, and
It's like
I knew it was funny. I maybe didn't know exactly all the details, but I knew it was funny.
The funniest part of the Pee Wee Herman thing was like his look, dude. Like,
oh, you mean his mugshot?
His mugshot. You couldn't have picked a better like mugshot.
Well, there was the one. So then, like Pee Wee Herman, had his like long hair tucked in, like he was wearing the Pee Wee costume, but had his long hair kind of slicked back and then tucked back in his collar. You could see it. But then he just comes out and says, "Heard any good jokes lately?" And then the place
went wild.
But that's like it was like they probably paid him a boatload of money to do that, and like just
That's
that one line,
amazing.
and like he didn't need to say anything else after that because like
We love Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah, we'll do some Pee Wee episodes.
It's like we're the Total Recall Show tribute to Pee Wee live from like a 70s Times Square porno theater. Like Gilbert, we love him. He's like anything he's in, he like ups the ante and like adds value to it.
Yeah, I mean he was the voice of Mixelplick on Superman the Animated Series, or Mixius Pitlick as they pronounce it on there. I grew up watching Super Friends, so to me he's Mixelplick, but he was Mixius Pitlick on the Superman show, and super funny episode too. Like he's funny, He got kind of like banned from the Howard Stern show, and so when he died, like Howard Stern was doing like a tribute, but then somebody called up and was like, "Howard, are you going to explain like why Gilbert hasn't been on your show for 20 years or whatever?" And Gilbert had his
20 years.
Yeah, it was something like he's been off for a really long time, and Stern was like,
Is it a shadow ban?
yeah, he was like, I'll explain later. I'll explain on another, and he did eventually explain it, and people had to like remind him like why he got banned or stuff. But I think like. Gilbert was very hurt by this because he was like part of that show. He had like an open invitation to come on whenever he wanted, and Gilbert's idea was that Gilbert's thought was just that like Stern had sort of gone in a different direction, and that Gilbert was like just so outrageous and stuff that like, but he was very hurt, but like he couldn't believe that he was just kind of dropped like that. But I like and Stern didn't claim this as the reason. Some of the other people around him said this as the reason, and kind of reminded him, and he's like, oh yeah, that is kind of weird, but like. Gilbert had this bit he started doing where like he was there and then he like started spitting on things like this was like out in the hall. This wasn't even on the show. This was like in the hallway where they're just kind of like filming with like video cameras, and Gilbert started like spitting on things. I don't know, some kind of like he always takes a joke and pushes it too much. But then they had like the cupcakes and donuts and stuff that were out for everybody, and he starts spitting on the cupcakes and donuts. And I know, like, Stern, germphobe and all that kind of stuff. Like, and again, like, you don't disrespect the food. I know that's, like, one of the big rules there. You don't and, like, so I think he was banned after that, where it's like, it's just too gross a thing to get over, especially if you are sort of like a germaphobe. But, like, just like that, he's disrespecting our place. He's again, it's in character for Gilbert. Maybe you could have had a conversation with him and kind of worked through it.
Instead of banning him.
But, yeah, so, like, he was... never invited back after that.
That's sad.
Yeah. It's
talk to him about it.
But he did and to his credit, Stern did address when he told that guy like, oh, I'll talk about it some other time, because he was doing his tribute to Gilbert. I'll talk about it some other time. I thought that was just like a stall, like he just like never bring. But then he did eventually revisit, and I forget what the reason he gave. But then some other people in the office were like, well, there was that time he spit on all it. It's like, oh, yeah, that's kind of disgusting. Yeah.
Oh, Gilbert like the Alan Thicke like wife swap.
Yeah,
thing.
he
like
commits
you
to
commit
a bit.
to a bit.
Yeah. like nobody's business.
Dude, that wife swap thing is like sounds
You
like
got to drop everything. and watch it.
ultimate.
I
ultimate.
laughed like one of the best things, funniest things I've ever seen on TV. I could not stop.
Singing the thick of the.
It's the thick of the man.
That's
Come on out, Gilbert. There he is, up in the rafters. He's the man who lives in the rafters. He's Gilbert. Hey, come on down, Gilbert. What do you think, Gilbert?
I like how in his bit he's imagining Gilbert lives up in like Alan Thicke's like house, and he's like
right.
the man in the rafters.
Yep.
Come on down.
Well, because that was it was a fiasco that Alan Thicke show, and like one of the bits was that Gilbert was the guy who lived up in the rafters of the studio. Come on down, Gilbert. Here he is, the man in the rafters. It's the thick of the night.
Dude, I'm gonna watch the Thick of the Night too.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody drop this. Watch Gilbert Gottfried on Celebrity Wife Swap with Alan Thicke.
Dude, that's
watch Thick of the Night.
Hilarious.
It was Stern's loss.
That
he didn't have Gilbert on all these years, and Gilbert, he had his podcast and stuff, so he got his voice out and stuff. Like Gilbert's podcast became like the last refuge for all the people who've been blacklisted from Stern. So it's like they've had Jackie the Joke Man.
What?
On.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they had Billy West on.
Oh my, Billy West.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I think they might have even had an episode with both of them, both of them together. But that was pretty nice.
We have the Total Recall joke.
Jackie's joke hunt. They never had Stuttering John on the Gilbert podcast.
You called that square?
I paid you back in jokes.
That's
Gilbert did a great Jackie the Joke Man imitation. He did a real good. That was the other thing. Gilbert, no joke was too inside. Like all that Thick of the Night jokes, that's very inside. Like who remembers the Thick of the Night show? But it's like the only I'll bet Alan Thicke's wife didn't know about Thick of the Night.
She's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but Gilbert, in jokes, nothing can be too in. And so he was such a fan of comedy. He would do spot on skewerings of other comedians. And before Jerry Seinfeld was famous, when he was just kind of a nightclub comedian, Gilbert Gottfried goes down in history as the first person to ever do a Jerry Seinfeld imitation. He would imitate Jerry Seinfeld when Jerry Seinfeld was first starting out and stuff. And to
Holy
this day,
shit.
And all and Gilbert would be doing his act, and then he'd be doing his Jerry Seinfeld imitation.
That's amazing.
Who are these people? And he would the wait staff would be cracking up, the other comedians would be cracking up, but then the audience would be baffled because they don't know who Jerry Seinfeld is, and Jerry Seinfeld would be steaming. He hated Gilbert's imitation of him.
Was Gilbert ever on a Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee? You gotta think he wasn't, because
there's too much bad blood. I'll have to check because he would have been great. I'll bet he wasn't on there.
No.
Jerry took that very seriously. He was not a fan of Gilbert's. And Gilbert always said about Seinfeld. He said when you would talk to Seinfeld, Seinfeld wouldn't look at you. He said Seinfeld wouldn't look at you. He would almost look at the air between you and him when you talked to him.
What
the funniest thing I've ever seen on TV is Gilbert on Wife Swap. The funniest thing I ever heard on the radio was. And I recorded this. I made an audio tape of it, and listened to it a million times. Tom. And I still have the audio tape. I can play for it. Gilbert Gottfried on the Howard Stern show, and they call up. They have Jerry Seinfeld's phone number. They call up his answering machine, and fill up the answering machine tape with Gilbert doing a Jerry Seinfeld imitation. He's pretending to be Jerry Seinfeld Jr. He's like, "Hey, Dad, you left Mom. Call once in a while. Send money. Mom needs money." Send money, and he's doing this whole act and doing all these, and he's and it's so funny, and at this time Seinfeld was kind of state of the art. The Seinfeld show was huge. It was cutting edge comedy. Seinfeld's comedy was as hip and cool as it would ever be, and Gilbert is just making you rethink why you like Jerry Seinfeld. He's making Jerry Seinfeld sound like such an idiot. And
that's the funniest shit in the world.
Which is probably why Seinfeld hated him, because it makes him sound. And he's like,
Gilbert cuts him to the quick.
Right, exactly. He's like, who invented the comb? Why? Somebody? Are you telling me someone sat there and said, I want a piece of plastic with sticks in it to run through my hair? Who are these people? Who invented a bed? Who needs a bed? Why don't you just sleep on the floor? It's right there. You got to climb into the bed. By then you're already tired. You got to climb into bed. Just lay on the floor to go to sleep. Just lay on the floor.
Taking the piss out of Seinfeld. That's so funny that
it's the perfect audience too, because like Seinfeld's like takes himself so seriously.
The Howard Stern dude. I have my Gilbert Gottfried syllabus.
Your Gilbert Gottfried homework. It's really easy to pick on Roseanne. Everybody picks on Roseanne. He's people like good comedy. Our show, we do good comedy. We do innovative things you've never seen before. On our show, we have a crazy next door neighbor. You've never seen a show with a crazy next door neighbor. We have a crazy next door neighbor.
A crazy Joe and Susan.
Right? Like, and it's like, yeah, because like Seinfeld was like so cutting edge. It was such a cutting edge show. And he's like saying,
Gilbert
like,
is getting
look,
him.
What's so cutting edge? He's got a yeah, Empty Nest has a crazy next door neighbor, and Seinfeld has a crazy next door neighbor.
The Honeymooners.
Yeah, the Honeymooners has a crazy next door neighbor.
Every
like,
show.
what's so cutting edge about that? He's like,
no wonder, Jared. That's amazing though. He fucking like takes the total piss out of Seinfeld.
Who invented the door? Why do you need a door to go from one room to the other? Just walk into the room. You don't need a door. Who invented the door? Who are all these people?
He's like, it's Roseanne.
But he fills up. It goes on for like an hour. He fills up, and then you get the beep. You eventually get the beep because Jerry Seinfeld's phone his. You've reached the end of his recording, and then they hang up and they call him back again, and then they find that there is more room on the beep. And then they see, so anyway, Dad, it's me, Jerry Seinfeld Jr.
My God, this is like, it's got to be on YouTube, right?
It has to be. But yeah, I have an audio tape, and I've like lent it out a bunch of times because I wanted everybody to hear it.
I think I should have.
I'll let you borrow that tape. Who are all these people?
Why do you need a door?
Who needs a door? Who invented the car?
We're cutting edge. And I've got a crazy next door neighbor.
And they're cracking themselves. Like, he's cracking himself up as he's doing. Like, he can't believe how crazy he's getting.
That's funny. They have Jerry's number. Too.
I'll call you right back. He starts imitating the answering machine message. I'll call you right back.
Do you have this recorded, Tom? Oh my God.
That's like the hardest thing to search on YouTube is like Gilbert Gottfried on Howard Stern because there's so much of it. There's like reams of it. There's subgenres. There's Karloff stuff. There's Groucho. There's
Old
Jerry Seinfeld. Old Groucho.
I think all the muscles in my face are damaged from this episode.
Gilbert does, he does side-splitting humor. Humor that you laugh so hard it hurts. It hurts up here. It hurts your cheeks. It hurts your chest. He was just that funny. It's just like,
I gotta look up.
And that's the thing about art. The work lives on. Whatever people thought of it in its day, or however it was taken, it lives on. The art lives on forever.
We're still talking about Gilbert.
Still laughing. Like all this stuff we were talking about, like just me doing like an imitation of it is hilarious. Like you watch this, like I've listened to that, like the Jerry Seinfeld stuff. I've listened to it a million times. I could go home and watch it tonight and like laugh.
I'm gonna be a
listener.
Yeah.
So this was our tribute to Gilbert Gottfried. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli or on Instagram at Tom_Scioli.
Follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb.
And please check out my Patreon. Go to patreon.com, search Tom Scioli, and you can see all different comics that I've been working on for the past couple of years.
Follow the show on Instagram at total_recall_show.
And we'll see you.
Thanks for all the laughs.